Good afternoon, everyone. It is the final Friday of the month. It is 1500 hours in the UK, which of course means it's time for PMI Live. You're very welcome to episode 120. Today's title, Stop Pushing, Start Shifting Mindsets. More specifically, we're dealing with practical ways to tackle resistance to change. And I can share this with you now, folks. I attended the dry run with my colleague Warren, who I'll introduce very shortly this morning. And what a fantastic session we have lined up for you today. Really thought-provoking and as the title suggests, really practical as well. So on that note, we're here, we're live, do interact with us, keep your comments, questions, queries coming. It'll be great to hear from you. We've got a couple of polls to gauge some reaction as we go through the sessions as well. Your participation in those would be much appreciated. But really, this stuff comes to life with your interactions. And we always enjoy them, especially on a Friday afternoon when we're raring to go and love being here. So if you are joining us on the live streams on YouTube, Facebook and LinkedIn, you're still able to come in over and join us in the live session. Hop on over to pmi.co.uk/webinars, where you can still register and join the live session. Talking of live sessions, we are streaming this now and also recording, and that will be shared with you in an email if you have registered for the session during the course of next week. Also accompanying that is highlights and key takeaways as well. And we found people using those in really interesting ways. And we summarise some key pieces from the sessions and share some resources as well within there. So do look out for those emails, which will accompany the voice of the customer surveys as well, which is where the titles and topics for PMI Live come from. Directly from you, our audiences. You tell us what you want us to cover, and we shall do so. We're currently shaping up the next 6 months schedule. So please do let us know in the Voice of the Customer survey what you'd like us to cover, how we can help meet your next challenge. So finally from me, before we hand over to Warren to introduce himself and take us through the content for today. I just wanted to draw attention to this. I pointed the right way this time. The Goals to Results Conference happening on the 17th of March 2026 at the University of Warwick in the UK. As the sign suggests here, performance improvement in an AI-driven world. We very clearly positioned the improvement professional and the improvement profession right bang center at the heart of this successful implementation of AI and AI solutions. So join us that day. We've been doing the dry runs for those for the last few weeks. 2 or 3 a day in some cases we've been seeing. My goodness, until I saw today's, I thought I'd seen brilliant stuff. But yes, absolutely superb content coming. Our teams have worked so hard over the last few months to make sure this stuff hangs together. It's refined, it's absolutely current, and sets us on the right path for the future. So Warren Knight, we haven't seen you for must be a month or so. Where have you been in that time?
Well, Rich, so I have been continuing to deliver my quality practitioner apprenticeship program, which I am thoroughly enjoying. I've got a really good cohort and we're making good progress.
I can see a few of them with us today, actually.
Oh, good. I'm really pleased to hear that. So a big shout out to them. Also I'm back to start an interesting client project around management systems, so process management systems. So really looking forward to that.
Yeah. And that's in the financial services sector, I understand.
It is. Yeah. So something slightly different.
Yeah, indeed. So turning our attention to today then, Warren, this is kind of a follow-on to one of the sessions that you delivered. I think it was in November. On that note, I forgot to say in my intro, all of the content, every PMI Live, every PMI podcast from across our series, along with all the infographics, all of our resources, you can find in the Knowledge Hub, which is pmi.co.uk/, in fact, just / and on the homepage, you'll find it at the top. Neil will share a link shortly to the Knowledge Hub. And then following that, he's going to share a link to the specific webinar that Warren delivered as a precursor to this. It's not a prerequisite at all, but it is a precursor. So if you like what you hear today, you may want to jump in and watch that one too. So those links are coming, and I can see them coming through. So Warren, what are you going to take us through today?
Right, so I'm just going to springboard just off of what we just said about the previous session. Just to put it into context, we were talking about how coaching and coaching processes are actually a good framework for influence. Okay. And we were looking a little bit around the factors that we need to consider for good influence, what influence is, and how we can sort of enhance our coaching techniques, if you like, okay, to be really influential. However, there's a big elephant in the room with influence, and of course is resistance. And we all recognize resistance. We've all experienced it, but you know, how much have we dug into it to really understand resistance and what it actually is, what it's about, where it comes from, why, so that we can be really effective at responding to it. So that's really what I want to look at today. Going to look at different types of resistance. Going to look at how we can spot and detect where there is resistance in our implementation communities.
And Warren, if I may just add there, just before you go on, one of the things I found this morning listening to you present this session was the two lenses to look at this this session through. One is thinking about other people that are resistant to change, but also your own behaviors. And I was self-reflecting. Did I recognize others, and did I recognize myself in some of the profiles and some of the concepts that you're going to share today? And I found that really helpful. So I just thought I'd share that just now with you.
No, that's brilliant, thank you. And is that double loop learning thing? Yeah, we absolutely need to helicopter in and to kind of think about our own practice as well, and you know, and what we're resisting, even when we're in a sense leading change.
Not that I hasten to add, not that I'm ever resistant to change, you understand, just for any of my direct reports who are on this call.
Indeed. And then sort of back end, we're going to pick up on so what's the drivers to resistance, and focusing on one or two in particular, and then finally bringing all that together to say, well, okay, based upon all of that, how do we actually respond effectively?
Great.
So where do I want to start? I want to start with a bit of challenge to our mindset. It's very easy when we're leading change leaders, well, you know, what call us what you will, to take quite a negative view of resistance, and to see it as something that we need to either kind of sort of jump over or maneuver around, or we need to stop it because it's in some way negative, and it's stopping us from getting where we want to be. But in truth, trying to stop people resisting change is like trying to stop people smiling when they're happy. Okay, it's a pretty impossible task, to be honest, because resistance is a natural and it's an emotionally driven response that we have. Okay, so we just got to accept that it exists. We got to accept that it's a natural response. So it's not something that we can contain, we can work around. It's not something that we stop, you know, or hammer like whack-a-mole. It's just something that we have to live with and we have to manage accordingly. So where I'm going to start with is actually starting to categorize and to name types of resistance, because not all resistance is the same. So we need to collect some data. So what is it we need to know? Well, of course, we need to know where the resistance is coming from, who's resisting, where in the organization they are, okay, they're positioned, and you know, when is the resistance appearing. And of course, we also need to understand why, from the point of view of the improvement, maybe the implementation, the context of the change in the organization. What is it about that change that people are resisting? Okay, so I'm almost thinking about it as the technical why, if you like. Now, okay, so once we know that, so once we know who's resisting and why, don't we have everything? Can't we just proceed upon that? Well, actually, I think the answer to that is no. I don't think that's enough. Actually, I think we need to understand more about the form that the resistance takes. How does it manifest itself rather than why is it occurring? Which is slightly counterintuitive, actually. We're all used to root cause analysis. We're used to trying to figure out why and responding to that. And yes, on one level, yes. But on another level, actually is more about, in the first instance, how it's manifesting itself and responding to that. Okay, because we're going to look at it from the point of view of the form it takes rather than what's causing it.
Yeah, and I find sometimes, Warren, that first bullet point you've got up there, we all too often stop at the first one, who.
Yeah, yes.
Full stop,
yes.
Close brackets.
Yes, and you know, going back to my previous slide, and then it's like, right, you know, in a sense, they're the focus point. They're almost the enemy, you know, that we need to deal with. And I'm being a bit, you know, being a bit challenging and a bit exaggerated there, but to make the point that we do have to, I think, adopt a particular mindset around resistance if we're to treat it effectively.
Cool.
So I like to connect the idea of resistance to some theorists and work by this gentleman here, Eric Berne. So the founder of a sort of psychological science called transactional analysis. Some of you in the audience may be aware of this. So for me, resistance, okay, is a game. So what's a game? So a game is, as it says here, it's a pattern of behavior. And it's repetitive. People repeat these resistance games to fulfill their needs. Okay, and actually, importantly, the resistance only appears in the framework of interaction between people. Games are played, psychological games, resistance games are played both consciously and unconsciously. I'm pleased to say, actually, most of the time we're not aware of the games that we're playing. All right, we're unaware of them. There are on occasions that people do consciously play games, and that's a very challenging place and a position to be in when you're on the receipt of a consciously played game. But in the main, people do it out of just habit. And why are we playing these games? Well, the payoff to a successful game is actually some way to avoid the change, okay, or the impact of the change, or importantly, to maintain the current situation, okay. So to resist the change happening, so we can stay warm, comfortable, secure, and competent in the current situation, because that's what the change is threatening, basically. And very much tied into this transactional analysis perspective is this idea that resistance games are what we call ulterior transactions. That means that when we're transacting with somebody, there is both a overt and a covert communication. Typically, the overt communication is where we're, in a sense, look like we're adopting the change, but actually covertly we're resisting the change. And is it the covert level that the game is played? And that's where we get this payoff when it works. And I think if we sum that up, I think James Baldwin does it extremely well. Okay, so if we're playing a game and it's somebody else's game of resistance, they have the rules, and if we don't know the rules, we can't play the game effectively. And it's until we understand those rules, and importantly, as he says here, we're able to just then step out of this game okay? Because this is of no value to either them or us, okay? But until we understand it and put our finger on it, we're not able to step out of it and do something more useful and effective.
And I think what I found so useful about this, Warren, is as is often the case with this stuff, it's having these tools and techniques as additional lenses to step back and think about this rather than just immediately react and respond. And that concept, that quote is so important because we just don't take that seriously enough and bound straight into trying to sort this resistance out. I just need to persuade them, or I just need to tell them why, instead of thinking about this larger context.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, Rich. And of course, it's back to what I said about not all resistance is the same, it's not equal. So, you may have been very successful in influencing somebody to step beyond their resistance in one situation and think you can just carbon copy that. But hopefully what I'm going to do is at least attempt to prove out that that's not the case.
Yeah.
So let's now importantly name some of these games. Okay, so what I've done is to come up with what I see as some of the common games that I see being played. My favorite by far is the yes but game. Okay, so the yes but game is, yes, I absolutely agree with you, Rich, that's a brilliant idea, but it can't work because, okay. So in a sense, yes, I'm agreeing with you. So on an overt level, yeah, I'm saying, yes, Rich, this is the best thing since sliced bread, but covertly, I don't agree with it and I'm going to resist it. There are other versions of that, as you can see on the screen. The not now game, yeah, this is great, but actually this is not the right time to do it. So let's, but we don't say this, of course, let's defer this indefinitely until you lose energy, you go away. Data dump, okay, well, yeah, but we need to figure this out a little bit more detail. So let's go into this end this drive for further analysis, which means we don't actually have to take action. The overwhelm, a bit like a yes game, but I'm going to give you a million reasons why, and I'm just going to machine gun them at you. Again, I'm being a bit exaggerated just to try and highlight these. And then you've got some other types of games there. You've got the stay silent game, of course, just not say anything. Okay. Or commit to doing something but then not do something that you've committed to, and always have a reason for that. So typically, I've been too busy, but it's still on my list. I'll get around to it, Rich, honestly. So there are a number of common games, and hopefully people are starting to go, I recognize these. So on that point, I think we've got a couple of polls, Rich.
We have. So we've got two questions in this poll that we're going to ask you. The first one is on screen now, and we'll publish this in a second. You don't need to reply in the chat. So the first one we're going to ask is, which resistance game do you most commonly encounter? Just select one of those. So have a look at those, and then Warren, if you just jump to the second question we're going to ask.
Sure.
Which resistance game do you find most difficult or frustrating? So which do you see most often? And the poll is coming now. No need to pop it in the chat. And Neil, if you'd like to launch those two questions, you can take a look through those. So that should be on screen for you now. So first question, which do you most commonly encounter and which do you find most frustrating? So have a think about those two dimensions of around the same point. So I can see that's popped up.
I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of this.
So it's coming in now. I can see that those are starting to appear. Thank you, everyone that's responding. Numbers are ticking up. Okay. I wonder if there's any bias in the order in which these questions appear. Always possible with any poll, but we'll see.
A really good point.
We'll see. We could have been very cruel and randomized the second one, couldn't we? Okay, so let's take a look at what we're getting here against these. Warren, I'm not sure if you can see these. I've got these on screen at the moment in terms of results. So on question 1, romping out in front is the yes but. Looking forward to your best Vicky Pollard impression shortly, Warren. And then the next one on the second question, which do you find most difficult? Now, much more of a mixed bag here. And what have we got? We've got so which do you find most difficult or frustrating? Appears to be the higher authority game, followed by stay silent. Interesting. Stay silent and it'll just go away if I stay quiet long enough. Okay. Okay, so I know we talked about expectations earlier on this, Warren. But what's this? What's this telling you? Is it a familiar setting in your practice over the years?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I mean, the first question is just interesting. Other people's sort of experiences of things. Yes, the yes but game is kind of quite a natural one, and I think we'll probably experience a lot of that with our close colleagues as well, and our peers as well as we do with implementation communities. Okay.
And the surprise for me on number 1 was not to see the overwhelm game was stronger represented, to be honest. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, it's just I'm surprised. I thought that would be a much closer second.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, my surprise one with number 1 was the not now game, actually. Yeah, interesting.
Yes.
Number two actually, yes. I could have predicted particularly stay silent and being busy games as being quite high. Okay, and I have a theory about that. All right. And the higher authority, again, I was going to predict that it wasn't quite as high as the stay silent game, but yeah, that one kind of pseudo fits my theory that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. So yeah.
And again, folks, I mean, we deliberately structured those questions there, but I'd place money on most people having answered that question about others rather than themselves as well. So remember to flip all of these concepts that Warren's talking around for both angles as we go forward.
Good point. Good point. Right. Okay. So we have recognized that resistance is, in a sense, it's a game, and there are different types of games. They manifest themselves in slightly different ways. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to think about detecting resistance. The best way of detecting resistance is through incongruence. That's what we're looking for. So incongruence is where there's a mismatch. Okay, typically between the words that we use, okay, and our general kind of behavior, our tone of voice, our body language. So that first one, verbal versus body language, is a typical example of incongruence, and you can see that on the visualization here. You know, what they're saying and the body language just doesn't match up. Okay, it's a not equal sign. Another one that we get often is that yeah, that's great, I'll put that on my to-do list, and then it never gets done, or is limited action. Tone versus content, you know, now we're into more subtle kind of areas of incongruence. Yes, Rich, that sounds like a really good idea.
Best always.
Indeed. Yeah, indeed.
My technique of agreeing with my mother, of saying, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're certainly right in every way, as always. I'm waiting for the reaction.
Indeed. And I always want to give people the opportunity to supercharge their dinner party conversations with interesting facts. So an interesting fact about incongruence is that when we are in this situation of incongruence, we only convey about 7% of what we truly mean and what we're thinking in the words that we use. The rest is in our body language and in our tone.
Say that again. Go on. Give us that.
Right.
Give us that stat again.
When we are in a place of emotional distress or incongruence, you know, when we're in the place of resisting, okay, we only convey 7% of where we are and our true meaning in the words that we use.
As much as that. Good grief. Okay. Right.
The rest of what we're truly communicating is in our body language and our tone. So back to this idea of ulterior transaction, this idea that there is a overt and a covert message. You can see that now linking very clearly with incongruence. Okay, because the overt and the covert message do not equal. Okay, they're not linked. So that's the critical skill that we need. Now, we've talked about the different types of games, but let's now go to a deeper level and start to think about, well, what sits under this? All right. So we got sort of basically two broad categories of resistance. We got what we call active resistance, and a lot of people will know this theory. We got active resistance. Examples from earlier, good examples of active resistance again would be the yes but game or the kind of the overwhelm game. Okay, because as it says here, actually the resistance is being verbalized. It's out there. It's but we cannot do this. That's the verbal resistance. Okay. Passive resistance is covert. Okay, so rather than the incongruence being the difference sort of with agreement and then objection, with covert, the incongruence is about the agreement and then the lack of action. Okay, or the words versus the behavior. So slightly different type of incongruence. Okay, active is more about verbal incongruence, and then passive is more about behavioral incongruence. So good examples of that is to stay silent and being busy kind of games. Why the two different ones? Well, that's driven by psychological safety. How safe we feel, okay, resisting. So if we feel they're in a safe situation, the chances are we're probably going to use a more overt resistance tactic, okay, or game, because we're feeling safe, we're feeling confident.
It's really interesting to think about that, isn't it? Because there's so many scenarios where, you know, it's like, why are they not saying anything? What's the silence all about?
Yeah, what is the silence
and adding that other dimension rather than just going you know, vertically in one of these columns, thinking about the interlink of the psychological safety in the middle.
Yeah, and of course this is a very, very important clue. Okay, so again, it's it's not why are they resisting, it's how are they resisting, because that's giving us the clue.
Oh, so many conversations going through my head while trying to retrofit these two. Okay, yes.
And I think linking back to the results of the poll, and particularly thinking about the first one, what's common in the yes but game being far out in advance, and I mentioned at that time that could be because it's about resistance with our close colleagues and peers, where we're gonna be more psychologically safe to push out and just go, hang on a sec, but whereas maybe, you know, if we're talking to the CEO, we might not feel so safe.
No comment.
And so therefore we might take the passive route. Right, so Well, that sort of brings us on actually very quickly. It sort of brings us on to the point with the second question. Okay, and what's most frustrating or difficult to deal with? And actually, the passive resistance ones of stay silent and been busy came up as second and third. And that's because it's covert, yes, typically it is more difficult because your antennae for incongruence needs to be much more sensitive. The yes but game is in your face. Passive is not. You gotta proactively detect it. I put interestingly high authority under active, but for me, when I was developing this, I was really arming about, because I think it kind of sits in the middle, because I think to sort of say, to step out of something, say, well, I can't make this decision, it's got to go to the boss, actually I think can be a form of passive resistance as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because you're hiding your resistance. So therefore, just focusing in on the passive resistance side again, because as I said, it's more difficult to detect because it's not in your face. So I'm not going to go through all of these, it'd be a bit boring, but the big point is, note that actually it's all about the behaviors, the tone, and the body language, not about the words. So going back to what we said earlier about the 7%.
And you know, the again, these the sheer volume here in terms of different things to consider. None of these, it's worth folks noting, are a prescription. You won't get a checklist with all of these. And then, of course, you throw in things like neurodiversity on top of that, that may have nothing to do with any of these as well. So it's all about knowing your audience fundamentally and using these as tools to think about the scenarios that you may be in.
Yeah, fantastic point. I think you sort of summarized it really well a moment or two ago, Rich. Is for me, I think we all have a pretty good antenna for incongruence. Okay, it's probably just not a conscious one. So it's like you said, you know, you deliver something and you're expecting a reaction, and then it's just silence and tumbleweed, and something flips in your stomach, and you think, well, what's that all about?
Yeah.
Don't ignore that.
Yeah. Tell me you hate it or not.
Stomach.
Yes.
Okay. Because you could be detecting that passive resistance, just not processing it. Right, so different games, and then we can categorize those down a little bit and understand that the type of game we play will depend upon how safe we feel in that particular environment with those particular people. So let's think a bit more about the causes of resistance now. I've used this theory in many of my webinars, so I'm not going to go into too much detail with it. But this idea that, you know, people are most ready for change, and what I mean by that is they're intrinsically motivated to work with the change when they are appropriately dissatisfied with the current situation. They understand, you know, how the change will benefit them personally, and those positive reinforcement factors outweigh the cost of making the change. You know, fear of the unknown, the effort to learn new things, etc., etc., etc. What I'm going to pick up on today, though, is that if we boil it down, there's two factors that sort of distort this picture. And that's our perception of the situation and our confidence. We can distort our ability to generate intrinsic motivation through a distortion of our perception, okay, through thinking biases or cognitive biases. We'll talk about those in a little bit more detail. Or it could just be due to the level of confidence that we feel that we have to make that change possible. And so these two things, these distortions in our perception and distortion in how we feel about our own confidence, if you like, can cause a lot of noise. Okay. Picking up on the biases. So what do we mean by bias? Well, one that we all know is the idea of the glass is half empty or half full, depending upon how you look at it. That is a psychological, is a cognitive bias, right? It's a thinking filter. So I believe one of the primary biases that is influencing resistance is what we call loss aversion. So what's loss aversion? As it says here, it's the tendency of people to feel loss more keenly than they feel gain. And any change is about loss of the current situation to gain a better situation. All right. So to try and make this make sense. So imagine, so you got two situations. You're being given £100. So that's a positive thing. Okay. So you got positive emotion. And then the other one is losing £100. So you have negative emotion. So they are obviously opposite emotions, but the amount of motion you feel, either positively or negatively, it's more when you lose than when you gain.
Yeah.
So therefore, just think about your implementation communities. Right then, guys and girls, we're going to change this. You're going to lose that, but you're going to gain this. So everybody's going, well, yeah, I don't care about what I'm going to gain. I'm more focused upon what I'm losing. And that's what's going to be prevalent to me right now, my loss. Okay.
I mean, the significance of that is really interesting, isn't it? Because so often we try and create scenarios where we describe the rounded picture, but not taking into account that what you're saying here is that people feel the things they're losing disproportionately more than they do with the things they're gaining. Yes. And again, I'm relating this to my own work in the last few months. I've seen this. I've absolutely seen this, and I've been slightly perplexed by it at times. Why on earth would you want to keep that? But it's right here. It's this.
Yeah. And we're naturally wired up to be like that. Can't say everybody, but it would appear that there's a lot of evidence to suggest the majority of us. Hence, going back to my very first point is you can't stop this from happening. It's a natural thing. We're wired in that way. So on that basis, then, how do we ensure that we respond effectively? So now we're thinking about bringing everything that we've talked about together. Different types of games that manifest themselves in different ways. Two fundamental types that are driven by our feeling of safety. What's driving that, and a resistance, particularly in the initial stages of us transitioning, is this idea of we feel the losses keenly. Right. Okay. So how do we bring that together as a strategy now? Okay, for getting people in a better place. So what I'm going to do first of all, in terms of the strategy, I'm going to give you 3 fundamentals that you should adopt in your strategy for engaging your implementation community. And then I'm going to give you another 2, okay, which are specifically related to passive and overt active resistance. All right. So fundamental number 1, stop pushing. Okay. Picking up on the point we were just talking about here with the loss aversion, it feels, and I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of change agents about this, and almost we think about influence in the same way as a sales process. Let's sell the benefits hard. Okay. But if we believe in this idea of loss aversion, it doesn't matter how much you sell the benefits. That's not where people are focused, and it's not what's stopping them from moving forward. Okay. So the barrier that we need to break through is actually the feeling of loss and risk here. All right. Now, if you just keep pushing the benefits, all you're doing is you're trying to force people through that wall, but what you're not doing is attending to it. And that will have unintended consequences. You're just going to make it worse. You know, it's like tampering. Okay, you're not addressing the root cause, so you are just doing things that are causing more variation, more pressure. So we've got to switch our approach. Let's stop pushing the positives, you know, the benefits. Let's start pulling people by addressing their blockers. Okay, let's kick down the wall. Fundamental number 2. This is my chant. Concern is a friend, not an enemy. Very much connected with this idea that resistance is, you know, a natural response. So is concern. Okay, without concern, we would not survive very long, right? So again, okay, embrace it. Concern is somebody who says, I've got a concern. Actually, they have a level of energy and commitment for what you're trying to say. They just need to, you know, get over their wall. All right. So work with it. Okay. And remember that that concern is signaling a blocker that you can then explore with that person and help them with. In my previous webinar a month or so ago, I mentioned that first and foremost, you know, influence and change is a social process because we have to work together to make change happen, and it's all built upon relationships and trust, right? So if we open our arms and welcome people's concerns, we will build trust and better relationships. And actually, their concerns might be valid, so they could help you improve your solutions. So what do I want you to do? Fundamentals, part 2. Acknowledge those concerns wholeheartedly and then seek to understand them in terms of blockers. The third fundamental, okay, is about your ability to reframe. Okay, our ability to shift from what's perceived as a loss to an opportunity or a negative to a positive. Where we can, connect that with their goals. Okay, with their values. And remember that often the sense of loss is because we've lost control. We've lost control of the current situation. So reframe into something that they can then influence, bite-sized chunks. So those are the 3 fundamentals to build your strategy upon. All right, now let's go into the specifics. So I'm going to talk now about how do we deal with active resistance. I'm going to use the yes but game as the example, and I'm going to link it to the 6 categories of intervention that we talked about. So Heron's categories that we talked about in the last webinar. Immediately, the type of interventions that works for the yes but game would be supportive, as I said. Welcome those concerns, validate them. Yes, you are right, Rich. That is a concern. I get you. Catalytic. So explain to me a little bit more why you see this as a concern. So would it be a concern in this situation? So let's explore that a little bit more. And also, because it's overt, okay, confront it. Okay, confronting is not a negative thing. It's about just highlighting and reflecting back the incongruence you see. Yes, you said you're up for it, but then immediately you've given me a reason why it's not possible. So what's behind that then? Then at the appropriate point, we can use informative types of interventions then to do that reframing. Okay, yes, you're absolutely right. Taking this example, it will take too long to learn. I get you now. Right. Okay. So what if actually we broke this down to a number of smaller learning packages, and let's sort of cascade those at a time when you think it's relevant for your capacity. Right. Let's put it into positive. Let's put it into your hands and your control. Nice bit of reframing. And then what's the additional strategies for the stay silent game? Right. Well, immediately, okay, supportive. What we're trying to do here is build more trust, okay, and safety, so that that person feels that they can unzip their mouth and start to, actively, okay, express their concerns. Invite reflection. So I've talked about this. What do you think of it? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? So try and encourage the conversation. And cathartic. So again, how do you feel about it? What concerns you right now? What's your biggest fears? Again, what we're trying to do is to allow them to open up. So for me, that zip analogy is exactly what we're responding to with these interventions. And when it's the right time, then we can go for the informative type reframing interventions. One final point I want to pick up with these. Notice that, go back to the psychological safety bit. These people feel relatively safe. Okay, so we'll verbalize their issues, their concerns. So therefore, we're using a slightly more, sort of proactive type of interventions here early on than what we're doing with the passive, because actually, first and foremost, we need to take care of that safety in building those relationships before we start to kind of push a little.
And I'm not sure if you've noticed, Warren, but I've been adding some of the slides into the chat as well for people's reference, including Heron's 6 categories are in there that Warren made reference to, so you can see all 6 of them in there with the explanations.
Great, thank you, Rich. And then, so in summary, then, know the game to know the rules. Once you know the rules, okay, we can step out of the game and do something much more useful. The key to that, because the game is always played on 2 levels, so we've got to be able to detect the incongruence. That, hopefully, what I've pinpointed, fundamentally, that feeling of safety, okay, is at the heart of this in terms of what approach you take. There are a few fundamentals, okay. I think the first 2 are mindsets. This isn't the sell, and selling doesn't particularly work well in my experience. All right, it's a different thing. And work with the concerns. All right, make them your best friends. The third one is more of a technique about that reframing. And then finally, know the game you're playing, and therefore adjust your approach.
It's really interesting, that, Warren, isn't it? Because again, these things all overlap, don't they? And they come together in different ways. And again, it's not a prescription. I was thinking about the first summary there in terms of how significant that is, that we just sometimes carry on regardless, without identifying the which game it is we're playing in order to know to respond. I had a fantastic analogy of that over Christmas. It's with family playing a card game, and it was quite a long time into the game. Half the audience knew the game and the rules, half didn't. And it turned quite a long way into that game. We realized that myself and my other half, who thought we knew the game we were playing, we were imposing the rules of the wrong card game on the situation. We couldn't work out why such chaos was ensuing. And when you presented this earlier on, I was like, that is exactly this scenario. It applies precisely without knowing. And you think about that, the chaos that can ensue when you're trying to play the rule, trying to apply the wrong rules to the wrong game, or vice versa, and it happens.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful example of that tampering, isn't it? It's the wrong root cause and taking the wrong action. Yeah, absolutely. I think another really important point you mentioned, Rich, and I just want to finish up on this. None of this, and I tell whenever I'm working with my clients around this stuff, I'm always very careful to say, look, this is not about being armchair psychologists. Okay, we're not sort of licensed and qualified to do that. But you mentioned it earlier, it's about theories, it's about lenses. And I like to think about these things as being an optician. When you go and have your eyes tested, what the optician's doing is just changing lenses until you get clarity. All right.
Yeah.
And this is about that. Everything I've said hopefully makes sense and is useful to you and gives you insight, but it's not right. It'll never be right. It's a lens to look through. And if it works for you, it's a great use of my Friday afternoon, but if the lens isn't working, try a different lens.
Absolutely. Thanks, Warren. Okay, let's just finish the final few slides. So in case you missed my subtle plug for Goals for Results conference at the beginning of this session, 17th of March, University of Warwick, be there. It is the only improvement conference for practitioners by practitioners. Our teams have been working really hard to put together the content. It is looking fantastic. And we have guest speakers, guest facilitators in there as well, client case studies, you name it, it's in there. You won't find a more action-packed day, frankly. And I know I sound like I'm being boastful there, but I'm seeing behind the scenes and I'm speaking with data. Okay, next slide for us, please, Warren. What have we got coming up next month? On the 27th of February, the final Friday of the month, 1500 hours UK time, as always, we have our colleague Desmond Kelly joining us for PDSA Your Work, Your Project and Your Program, going back to some of the key tools as per your requests in the Voice of the Customer survey. And finally, I mentioned the Knowledge Hub earlier on as well, which you will find on the website. Top menu bar, find the Knowledge Hub. All of our resources, a great wealth of them, will be found there. And for any, I noticed we've got a lot of our apprentice learners with us today. Welcome, it's great to have you with us. All of those resources can be found in the Knowledge Hub, folks. Do dive in and use them. And all of it counts towards your OTJ without fail. So folks, on that note, as ever, it is our privilege and our pleasure to deliver these sessions to you. Thank you so much to so many of you for joining us. Thanks for your interactions. It's much appreciated when you get to it. Have a lovely weekend and thanks for joining PMI Live.
Thank you.